here we go, December. I'm going to try to read a bunch here today. So much is about to happen. So probably one of the most shocking parts of this story happened at the end of November with Mrs. Bijot's husband passing away in the war in Vietnam. And now let's move forward, and here we go. December, Long Island. Remember, this is the month where Holling performs in a play as Ariel the Fairy with yellow tights and feathers on the... On the first Wednesday of December, Mr. Goreshi announced over the PA that in January, every junior and senior high school in the state would be taking the New York State Standardized Achievement Tests, and that we should plan on taking practice exams at home during the holiday break. The reputation of the school was at stake, he told us, and he was very, very, very confident that we would not let Camillo Junior High down. Boy, that seems like the perfect way not to cause stress. Yeah, so I do want to let you know. So they're doing standardized tests just like our PSSAs, even though we don't have to do them this year.
2, 1, jump!
But they were doing them in the 60s. So, as special as we think we are with all these weird wonky tests, they did them in the 60s. I know they did them in the 70s and 80s because I did them. So they are not just unique to you guys. I'm not sure, but I think Mrs. Baker may have rolled her eyes. The rest of the morning announcements were as exciting as December drizzles, simile. And maybe Mr. Goreshi knew that because he said he wanted to conclude by reading a lovely note from Mrs. Sidman. She wished us all a happy holiday spirit at this very special time of year and hoped that, even in a time of war, we might be able to use these holidays to reflect on the virtues of peace and goodwill. She hoped all of this very sincerely. The letter, Mr. Goreshi told us, was written from Connecticut, where Mrs. Sidman was taking a retreat in seclusion. Staying away from Doug Switek's brother. Actually, the whole school was in a happy holiday spirit, even before Mrs. Sidman's letter. On one side of the main lobby, Mr. Vendleri had put up a huge fir tree and wound it with silver garlands. Balls as big as grapefruits hung from each branch. Plastic ones, because last Christmas, Mr. Vendleri had seen what Doug Switek's brother did to glass ones. Wherever there wasn't a Christmas ball, tinsel hung down, except when the lobby doors opened and it blew straight out. And then, I guess because Mr. Vendleri believed that no Christmas tree should show any green at all, he had sprayed quick-drying foam snow over the whole thing, as though there really might be snow on Long Island on Christmas Day, which hadn't happened since before there was a Christmas Day. Christmas trees were like this for me as a kid, too. There used to be this weird spray. They still probably make it, actually. There used to be this metally tinsel that we used to put on trees and stuff like that. On the other side of the main lobby was the menorah. It was heavy and old and had belonged in Mr. Samowitz's family for a whole lot longer than 200 years. Hyperbole. Some of the white wax that clung to the sides of the bronze cups came from candles that had been lit in Russia. We looked at it, standing on its white linen cloth as huge as history, hyperbole, and could almost smell the sweet wax in the darkness of a long time ago. So you can see on one side they're celebrating Christmas, and on the other side they're celebrating Hanukkah. Just like there's Catholic Church that celebrates Christian Christmas, and then there's the temple which celebrates Hanukkah. That first week, the second graders made red and green construction paper chains that hung the length of the elementary and junior high school halls. The fourth graders cut menorahs from cardboard and covered them with glittering aluminum foil. The first graders cut out the flames for each of the 9 candles, and together they put a menorah on every classroom door. The fifth graders had Charles, who could not only collect erasers but also write exquisite calligraphy. It's a really nice kind of writing, which made every girl in his grade and some of the 6th grade fall in love with him just because he could write Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah with loopy swirls. His signs appeared all over the halls, and gushing 5th grade girls colored in the loops secretly to show their eternal love and devotion to the artist. Danny Huffer said it just about made him throw up. All through Camillo Junior High, there were signs of the season. The The windows on the classroom doors became crepe paper stained glass. Mr. Petrelli put flashing colored lights around his door with a menorah with orange light bulb on his window shelf. Mr. Ladima, who was from Holland, put wooden shoes on his window shelf and filled them with straw and coal, probably because he was Doug Switek's brother's teacher. Mrs. Baker didn't put anything up, nothing at all. She took down the aluminum foil menorah the first graders had put on her door, and she wouldn't let any of Charles' signs into the room. When Mrs. Kabakoff came in carrying a crock of apple cider left over from the second grade Pilgrim Fest, offering a special holiday drink for lunch, Mrs. Baker smiled one of those smiles that isn't really a smile, then had Danny Huffer take the crock and shove it back on the high shelf in the coat room above the moldering lunches. Mrs. Baker was not in a happy holiday spirit. So why? So think about that, guys. Why is Miss Baker not in a happy holiday spirit? I think it makes sense. Obviously, who's not here? Her husband, who is fighting a war in Vietnam. And to be really honest, neither was I. All because of Mr. Goldman and the Long Island Shakespeare Company's holiday extravaganza, in which I was going to play Ariel. Ariel the fairy. And nothing, I said to Mr. Goldman, helped. Every boy should be so lucky as you to play in a Shakespeare Company's holiday extravaganza with such a part, he said. I should have been lucky as you at your age. But let me tell you, wearing yellow tights wasn't making me feel lucky. Not if I wanted to keep living in this town. So I showed the tights to my mother, who I figured would have some concern for her only son's reputation. They're very yellow, she said, and they have white feathers all over the... Yes, she said, but it will be cute. They'll sort of wave in the breeze when you walk. I still can't get over it. My son playing Shakespeare. Oh, he's in trouble. They're yellow tights. I'm playing a fairy. If this gets out, I'll never be able to go back to school. No one from Camillo Junior High will be there, and even if they were, everyone will think it's cute. Mom clearly has no idea. I tried my father. Make a prediction. I handed him the tights while Walter Cronkite was announcing new bombing in Vietnam. I thought they might catch his eye, even though the CBS Evening News was on. They did. You're going to wear these, he said. That's what they want. Yellow tights with white feathers on the... Yep. Whose idea is this? Mr. Goldman's idea? Uh-oh. My father tried looking away from the yellow. It wasn't easy, since they were the brightest thing intended to draw the eye. Mr. Goldman, he said. I think you've heard the rest of this conversation before. Yes, I said. The Benjamin Goldman who belongs to Goldman's Best Bakery. I guess that's the one, I said. My father looked at the yellow tights again, sort of shielding his eyes, and considered. The day might come, he said finally, when tights, which the room and before, Goldman thinks about expanding his business, and then he'd need to hire an architect. Dad, maybe one that he remembers doing him a favor. I can't wear these, I said. He handed the tights back to me. Wear them. Just hope that no one from your school sees you. I didn't try my sister, but she came to my room anyway. Mom told me about the tights, she said. Let me see them. I showed her. When this gets around school, it won't get around school, I said. Sure it won't, she said. You keep telling yourself that, and maybe it will come true. But if it ever gets over to the high school, you'd better pray that no one knows I'm your sister. She shut the door. That sure doesn't sound like a flower child who doesn't do harm to anyone, I hollered after her, but she didn't answer. It didn't help that on the night of the first dress rehearsal, I wore my blue jeans over the yellow tights until the last minute. The entire cast of the Long Island Shakespeare Company's holiday extravaganza clapped when I came on stage. Which they did because they had to do something when they saw where the feathers were, and what they really wanted to do was laugh out loud. But they knew what I would do, and it was too late to find another kid to play Ariel the Fairy. I mean, who else was going to wander into Goldman's Best Bakery and be $2.80 short on an order of cream puffs? The irony. Mr. Goldman, I said after the applause, I can't wear these. Of course you can wear these. You are wearing these now. I look like a fairy. And this isn't the point. You should look like a fairy. You are a fairy. Do you know what will happen if someone from school sees me? They will say, there is Holling Hood on stage, playing one of Shakespeare's greatest scenes from one of his greatest plays. This is what will happen. Mr. Goldman, it's been a long time since you were in the 7th grade. I never went to 7th grade. Where I come from, no boy went to 7th grade. We were all working in fields, digging and hoeing and digging and hoeing. But you go to school, then you go home and play. Then you come on stage to be famous Shakespeare character. There's more that a boy could want. Without even trying, it wouldn't be hard to come up with a list of 410 things more that a boy could want. But it's hard to keep complaining after the "when I was a boy, life was so hard" card is played on you. So I did it. I got through the whole dress rehearsal playing Ariel the Fairy while wearing bright yellow tights with white feathers on the, well, I might as well say it, butt. There, on my butt. White feathers waving on my butt. Let me tell you, this did not put me in a happy holiday spirit. The whole of December could have been ruined because of the yellow tights, except for one thing. One glorious, amazing, unbelievable, spectacular thing. The one thing that kept us going in the bare, holiday-less classroom of Mrs. Baker. The one thing that brought back meaning to Hanukkah and Christmas. Mickey Mantle.
Well, Mickey, come on in. Welcome to Home Run Derby.
Thank you, Mark.
How are you going to hit today?
I'm going to hit right-handed today, Mark.
Is that your best power?
Well, most all of my real long home runs have been from the right-hand side of the plate.
No runs in. Here, the last half of the first inning. High fly ball deep in the left center field. This one may go. It's going. It is gone over the left center field wall. That's one of the tape measure variety. Mickey, you hit a long one there for your one run of that inning.
Yeah, I hit those bugs. They just didn't go out.
You hit some of those ground balls fairly solid.
Yeah, I hit the 2 balls on the ground real solid, but I couldn't get them up.
They've got to get up in the air and out.
Yeah.
The greatest player to put on Yankee pinstripes since Babe Ruth. Mickey Mantle. And it was Mrs. Baker who announced this advent. I suppose it will be of some interest to some of you, she said, that Mickey Mantle is coming to town next week. Now, I grew up in the 70s, and my dad had grown up in the 50s and 60s, much like Holling. He was a little bit older than Holling, and his favorite player growing up was Mickey Mantle. And he grew up watching the New York Yankees because the Yankees were America's team kind of at the time. We didn't have cable back then. You had 3 main channels, and there was a game of the week on every Saturday. And the networks would try to play the most popular teams. So the Dodgers and the Yankees were always those teams, with the exception of a few other teams like the Giants with Willie Mays and the Braves with Hank Aaron. And you had some other teams here and there, but usually the Yankees, especially with Mantle, because he was, at the time, probably the best player in the league, or one of the best players in the league with Willie Mays. So Mickey Mantle coming to visit would be a huge deal. I'm still my dad's favorite player of all time. The class went as quiet as if Sycorax and Caliban, the rats, not the monsters, had appeared before us, clacking their appalling yellow teeth. Some interest, said Danny Huffer. To some of us, I said. Who's Mickey Mantle? asked Marilee. Who Mickey Mantle? asked my T. He is a baseball player, said Mrs. Baker. He is the baseball player, said Danny Huffer. He had a batting average of .245 this year, said Doug Switek. That's weird, Doug Switek. Danny Huffer turned to look at me. How does he know that? What is a batting average? asked Marilee. My brother-in-law, said Mrs. Baker loudly, has developed strong ties to the Yankee organization, and he has arranged for Mickey Mantle to come to the Baker Sporting Emporium. I am told that in addition to strutting around swinging baseball bats as if it were a worthy vocation, he will sign baseballs for anyone willing to bring one to him. A cheer from the class as if the happy holidays were already here. This is not an occasion to clamber onto your desk, Mr. Hupfer. You should tell your parents that he is coming a week from this Saturday night and that he will be swinging bats and signing baseballs from 8 o'clock until 9:30. You should all take note that had he been swinging bats and signing baseballs on a school night, I never would have agreed to make this announcement. Another cheer, wild and extravagant. "Who's Mickey Mantle?" asked Mary Lee again. We all ignored her. "Mickey Mantle." Now, things would have been fine if Mrs. Baker just left it there. I mean, Mickey Mantle coming to the Baker Sporting Emporium and all. But she didn't. "I have a second announcement," said Mrs. Baker. We all got quiet again. "Is someone else coming to the Emporium too?" asked Danny Hupfer. "Maybe someone I know?" asked Mary Lee. "No one else is coming unless you want to say that someone is up and coming." That was a teacher joke. No one laughed, even though we were all supposed to. No one ever laughs at teacher jokes. That better not be true. I have been informed by Mr. Goldman, who is the president of the Long Island Shakespeare Company, that one of the students in our class will be performing in the company's holiday extravaganza. He will be playing a part from The Tempest. I knew what was coming next. For a while, I had wondered if Mrs. Baker had stopped hating my guts. Now I figured she hadn't. As the corresponding secretary of the company, I invite you all to come see Mr. Holling Hoodhood in his Shakespeare debut. It will be a week from this Saturday, the very same night that the eminent Mr. Mantle will be at the Emporium swinging bats. The performance should be finished 30 minutes before Mr. Mantle makes his exit. So, you will all have time for both. Toads, beetles, bats. The only thing worse would have been if she found a way to bribe them to come. Maybe with cream puffs. Uh-oh. "And for those who attend," said Mrs. Baker, "your ticket stub will bring you extra credit for your next English for You and Me assignment." See how teachers know? It was worse. Mrs. Baker looked at me and smiled. It was like the smile she had before Doug Switek's brother's assassination attempt. And shouldn't someone have told me that Mrs. Baker was the corresponding secretary? This is the part where, if we lived in a just world, some natural disaster would occur right then, or maybe an atomic bomb attack to obliterate the news of the Long Island Shakespeare Company's holiday extravaganza, and so save me from my undeserved humiliation. Still, even though there wasn't a natural disaster or atomic bomb attack, Mickey Mantle was almost enough. After all, with Mickey Mantle coming, no one really cared about my Shakespeare debut. No one except Mary Lee, who didn't know who Mickey Mantle was, and my T, who also didn't know who Mickey Mantle was, and Danny Hupfer, who did know who Mickey Mantle was, and they all cornered me after lunch. "Why so sneaky?" asked Mary Lee. "Are you playing a girl's part?" "No, I'm not playing a girl's part. It's a part from The Tempest," I said. "Gee, so when Mrs. Baker said you were playing a part from The Tempest, she meant that you were playing a part from The Tempest," said Danny Hupfer. "We know a whole lot more now than we did before." "Ariel. I'm going to play Ariel." "That's a girl's name," said Mary Lee. "Isn't that a girl's name?" "Suspicion is an unbecoming passion," I said. "Ariel is a warrior." I know, that sounds like a lie, but Presbyterians know that every so often a lie isn't all that bad, and I figured that this was about the best place it could happen. Who does the warrior fight? The rebels who usurped Prospero's kingdom and who want to murder him and his daughter. "That sounds all right," said Danny Hupfer. "So you get to fight for them like a knight who's their champion?" "Yes." "And you get to wear armor and stuff like that?" said Danny Hupfer. "Stuff like that," I said. "Maybe I'll come then to see the armor," he said. "But it'd better be over in time for Mickey Mantle." "Still sounds like a girl's name to me," said Mary Lee. We ignored her again and headed back into the classroom. But just before we got in the door, my T stopped me with a hand on my chest. She looked at me for a long moment and then whispered, "Not good to be a warrior." I looked at her, I guess kind of startled, and she went into her desk before I could say a thing. But what does she know? So think about why my T might have said that. Remember where she's from? Remember why she's in the United States? Complicated. All right, we're going to stop right there. Nothing extra today. There are some more videos for crop QVS. You don't really have to watch them today. Your only goal is to finish that crop QVS that was your homework from yesterday. Make sure it's perfect. Like brown, light, perfect cream puffs. We want long, well-written crops. Okay? All right. We're going to stop right there, and tomorrow we will end the week with what happens during the play.